I felt the freezing rain on my skin and realized I was back. Back on the slippery wooden dock, back in the nightmare. But this time, when my brother lunged toward the churning water to save my boyfriend, I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I whispered, watching him sink. In my previous life, July 14th was the day my world shattered into a million irreparable pieces. We were spending the weekend at the O'Connor family cabin on Lake Minnetonka. It was supposed to be a celebratory getaway. My brother Nathan had just been accepted into his surgical residency at the Mayo Clinic. My boyfriend of 4 years, Cameron Hayes, had organized the trip, ostensibly to celebrate Nathan. But the guest list included a phantom from Cameron's past, Vanessa Sterling. Vanessa was Cameron's high school sweetheart, his first love, the one who had moved to Paris for art school and left him broken-hearted. She had recently returned to Minnesota, a little older, a little more sophisticated, and carrying an air of fragile melancholy that seemed to act as a magnet for every man in the room. Cameron insisted we invite her because she was going through a tough breakup and needed the distraction. Like an idiot blinded by love and trust, I agreed. The afternoon of the 14th, the sky turned the color of a bruised plum. The wind howled off Wayzata Bay, whipping the lake into a frenzy of whitecaps. We were out on the dock securing the boats. I was tying down the jet ski, my back turned, when I heard the scream. Vanessa had been standing too close to the edge of the wet wood, wearing completely impractical sandals, trying to get her sweater from the pontoon boat. She slipped, hitting her head against the fiberglass hull before tumbling into the freezing, violent water. I turned just in time to see Cameron's face contort in a mask of sheer, primal terror, a look of absolute devastation I had never once seen him wear for me. Without hesitating, without even stripping his heavy denim jacket, Cameron dove in after her. But the current was treacherous, pulling them both under the pontoon. Cameron wasn't a strong swimmer, and the water was freezing. He reached Vanessa, wrapping his arms around her waist, but the undertow was dragging them both down into the dark. That was when Nathan, my brilliant, selfless, golden-hearted brother, threw himself into the water. Nathan was a former collegiate swimmer. He reached them in seconds. I stood frozen on the dock, screaming into the wind as the rain began to lash down in sheets. I watched as Nathan fought the current, shoving Cameron upward, screaming at him to grab the ladder. Cameron did. He grabbed the metal rungs with one hand, hauling a coughing, sputtering Vanessa up with his other arm. But as Cameron kicked off to propel himself upward, his heavy boot struck Nathan squarely in the chest, pushing my brother back down into the churning depths. Cameron and Vanessa collapsed onto the dock, safe. I fell to my knees, searching the black water. "Nathan! Nathan!" He never came back up. It took the dive team 3 days to find his body, tangled in the heavy weeds near the marina. The tragedy broke me, but what happened afterward destroyed my soul. At Nathan's funeral, Cameron stood beside me, but his eyes were constantly scanning the crowd for Vanessa. When she arrived, dressed in designer black, weeping delicately into a tissue, Cameron actually left my side to go comfort her. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders while I stood alone in front of my brother's casket. I thought grief had just confused him. I made excuses for him, but the truth unraveled with agonizing clarity over the next 6 months. Cameron grew distant. He moved out of our shared apartment, claiming the memories of that weekend were too traumatic for him to be around me. Exactly 1 year after my brother died to save his life, I received a thick, cream-colored envelope in the mail. It was a wedding invitation. Cameron Hayes and Vanessa Sterling. I drove to Cameron's new office, a high-rise downtown where he worked as an investment banker for Vanessa's father's firm. I cornered him in the lobby, screaming, demanding to know how he could do this, how he could build his happy ending on my brother's grave. Cameron looked at me not with guilt, but with a cold, irritated pity. "Nathan made his own choice, Rachel," he said, adjusting his expensive silk tie. "No one asked him to jump in. He had a hero complex, and it got him killed. You can't hold me and Vanessa hostage to his stupidity. We survived. We realized life is short. I'm sorry you're stuck in the past, but I've moved on." His words were a knife, twisting in my chest. A hero complex. Stupidity. My brother had sacrificed his bright, beautiful future so this pathetic excuse for a man could breathe, and Cameron didn't even have the decency to feel remorse. The betrayal broke my mind. I lost my job. I stopped eating. I developed severe pneumonia that winter. My immune system shot from deep depression and neglect. In my final moments, lying in a dingy, freezing apartment, coughing up blood onto thin sheets, I stared at my phone screen. It was an Instagram post of Cameron and Vanessa on their honeymoon in the Maldives, smiling under the sun. I hate them, I thought, as the darkness finally pulled me under. If I could go back, I would rather watch him die 1,000 times than let my brother trade his life for a dog like him. Crack. Thunder split the sky, deafening and immediate. I gasped, sucking in a lungful of sharp, pine-scented air. The smell of ozone and approaching rain filled my nostrils. The ground beneath my feet was swaying slightly. I blinked, my vision blurring and then snapping into horrifyingly sharp focus. The gray sky, the roaring wind, the wooden planks of the O'Connor family dock beneath my bare feet. The heavy, yellow rope of the jet ski was in my hands. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought it might shatter my sternum. No. It isn't possible. This is a hallucination. The firing of dying neurons. But the freezing spray of the lake hitting my cheek felt too real. The rough fibers of the rope burning my palms felt too real. Rachel, tie that off quickly. The squall is right on top of us. I whipped my head around. There he was, Nathan. He was standing 10 feet away, wrestling with the tarp on the speedboat. He looked so young, so vibrant, the wind tossing his dark hair, his strong arms flexing as he pulled the canvas tight. He was alive. A choked sob tore from my throat. Then a sound cut through the wind that froze the blood in my veins. A high-pitched, delicate laugh. "Oh, Cameron, stop it. My sweater is going to blow away." I turned toward the pontoon. Vanessa was teetering on the edge of the dock, reaching for a beige cardigan snagged on the boat's railing. She was wearing those same stupid, strappy designer sandals. Cameron was standing right behind her, laughing, his hands hovering near her waist, utterly ignoring the dangerous weather conditions in favor of flirting with his high school obsession. The timeline hadn't just reset. I was standing at the exact precipice, the minute before everything went to hell. I dropped the rope. I didn't scream a warning to Vanessa. I didn't tell Cameron to back away. Instead, I moved. I sprinted away from the jet ski and closed the distance between me and Nathan. Just as I reached my brother, it happened. Vanessa's sandal slipped on the wet moss edging the dock. She let out a sharp shriek, her arms flailing. Her head cracked against the fiberglass pontoon with a sickening thwack, and she plunged like a stone into the churning black water. "Vanessa!" Cameron roared. It was that same primal, gut-wrenching scream, the scream of a man watching his entire universe fall away. Without a second thought, without even looking at me, he threw himself off the dock, diving into the freezing, violent undertow. Nathan's head snapped up. His medical training and swimmer's instincts kicked in instantly. "Hey!" he yelled, dropping the tarp. He took a running step toward the edge of the dock, preparing to launch himself in after them to perform a rescue. Not this time. I threw myself at Nathan, tackling him around the waist. I was smaller than him, but the sheer desperate momentum of my body slammed him off balance. We crashed hard onto the wooden planks, Nathan taking the brunt of the fall on his shoulder. "Rachel, what the hell are you doing?" Nathan bellowed, trying to scramble up, his eyes fixed on the water. "They went under. Let me go." He was strong. He shoved me aside, getting up on one knee. If I just held him back, he would overpower me. He was too good of a person to stand by and watch people drown. I needed a distraction so profound it would override his instinct to save a stranger. I collapsed onto the wooden planks, clutching my chest, and let out an agonizing, blood-curdling scream. "Nathan!" I shrieked, my voice cracking. I dug my nails into my own chest, hyperventilating, forcing my eyes to roll back slightly. My chest! Nathan, my heart, I can't breathe. I writhed on the wet wood, gasping like a fish out of water, clutching his leg with a death grip. Nathan froze. The panic in his eyes split into two violently opposing directions. He looked at the churning black water where Cameron had just surfaced, flailing wildly and trying to grab an unconscious Vanessa. Then he looked down at me, his little sister, who appeared to be having a sudden, massive cardiac event on the dock.
Rachel, look at me!
Nathan dropped back to his knees, his medical training instantly pivoting to the emergency directly in front of him. He grabbed my face, checking my pulse, pressing 2 fingers hard against my carotid artery. Pulse is racing. Rachel, look at me. Breathe. Are you in pain? Left arm? I can't. I whimpered, keeping a vice-like grip on his shirt. I buried my face in his chest, trembling violently. Over Nathan's broad shoulder, I had a clear, unobstructed view of the water. Cameron was panicking. The water was about 50 degrees, and the shock was paralyzing his muscles. He had one arm around Vanessa's neck, trying to keep her bleeding head above the waves, but the current was dragging them under the pontoon, exactly like last time. "Help!" Cameron screamed, swallowing a mouthful of lake water. He thrashed, his eyes wild with terror, searching the dock. "Nathan, help us!" Nathan flinched, instinctively trying to rise again. "Rachel, hold on, I have to." "Don't leave me!" I screamed, crying real tears now. The trauma of my past life, the memory of his cold corpse, fueled my acting. "I'm dying, Nathan. Please, it hurts so bad." Nathan stayed. He gritted his teeth, holding me tight, turning his head to shout toward the shore. "Call 911, get a life ring, throw a rope." He yelled to our neighbors, who were just coming out of their cabin up the hill. I looked back at the water. Cameron's head bobbed up again. He was exhausted, his heavy denim jacket pulling him down like a lead weight. He managed to push Vanessa toward the pontoon. Her limp hand caught the metal rung of the boat's boarding ladder. She was secure. But the effort cost Cameron his final reserve of strength. The undertow grabbed his legs. He slipped backward. For one brief, fleeting second, his terrified gaze locked onto mine over my brother's shoulder. He saw me staring at him. He saw the utter, icy calm in my eyes. I wasn't screaming for him. I wasn't reaching for him. I was simply watching him. His eyes widened in shock, a silent question dying on his lips as the black water rushed over his face. He didn't come back up. "Hold on, Rachel, the ambulance is coming," Nathan said, his voice shaking as he kept me grounded, completely unaware that he had just survived his own death sentence. I buried my face in his warm, living neck, listening to his strong heartbeat. The wind howled, and the sirens began to wail in the distance. Vanessa was slumped against the ladder, unconscious but breathing. The dark water rolled smoothly over the spot where Cameron Hayes had vanished. "It's okay, Nathan," I whispered, closing my eyes, a cold, dark sense of peace washing over my soul. "I'm feeling much better now." The harsh, fluorescent lights of the emergency room were a jarring contrast to the murky depths of the lake. I was lying on a crisp hospital bed, a heart monitor steadily beeping next to me, proving my vitals were perfectly normal. Nathan sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside my bed, his head buried in his hands, still wearing his damp clothes. The dive team had recovered Cameron's body 2 hours later. I played my part perfectly. When the ER doctor told me the news, I screamed. I wept violently into my hands, hyperventilating until they had to give me a mild sedative. Inside, however, a profound, eerie stillness anchored my soul. The scales had been balanced. My brother was breathing. The door to my room swung open with enough force to bounce off the wall stopper. Victoria Hayes stepped into the room. Cameron's mother was a terrifying force in Minneapolis high society, a woman whose wealth was only matched by her ruthless disposition. She wore a tailored charcoal trench coat, her impeccably styled hair slightly damp from the rain. Her eyes were red-rimmed but blazing with a furious, unhinged grief. She was flanked by 2 police officers. "You," Victoria hissed, pointing a trembling, diamond-clad finger at Nathan. "You killed my son." Nathan stood up immediately, his face pale. Mrs. Hayes, I am so deeply sorry. I tried to organize a rescue, but Rachel collapsed. You are a collegiate swimmer, a doctor, Victoria shrieked, stepping into his personal space, her voice echoing down the sterile hallway. You stood on that dock and watched my boy drown while he was trying to save Vanessa. You let him die because you were too cowardly to jump in. My sister was having a suspected myocardial infarction, Nathan fired back, his own shock finally morphing into defensive anger. Her lips were turning blue. She had no pulse. I had to triage the patient right in front of me. She was faking, Victoria sneered, turning her venomous glare toward me. Look at her. The doctors say there is absolutely nothing wrong with her heart. It was a panic attack. A pathetic, hysterical panic attack, and it cost my son his life. I let a single tear roll down my cheek, looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. Mrs. Hayes, I loved Cameron. I would have given my life for him. I didn't know what was happening to me. The pain was blinding. Save your crocodile tears, Rachel, Victoria snapped. I know Cameron was pulling away from you. I know he still loved Vanessa. You saw an opportunity to let him die, and you took it. Ma'am, you need to step back, one of the officers intervened, gently grasping Victoria's elbow. This was a tragic accident. The medical reports confirm Miss O'Connor suffered a severe vasovagal syncope brought on by environmental stress. Her brother acted according to his medical training. Victoria yanked her arm away, her chest heaving. She glared at me, a promise of war in her eyes, before turning on her heel and storming out. Once the room was quiet again, Nathan sank back into his chair, looking utterly defeated. She's grieving, he whispered, rubbing his temples. But God, Rachel, if I had just jumped in. Don't, I said, reaching out to grasp his warm, living hand. Don't you dare do that, Nathan. You saved me. If you had jumped in, the current would have taken you too. He made a choice to jump into freezing rapids, wearing heavy clothes. You couldn't save him. I had to ensure Nathan never carried the survivor's guilt that Cameron had so easily brushed off in my past life. I needed him whole. The next morning, before I was discharged, I slipped out of my room and walked down the hall to the ICU step-down unit. Vanessa was there. She had suffered a severe concussion and mild hypothermia, but she was going to be fine. Her luck was truly a cosmic joke. I pushed the heavy door open. Vanessa was awake, staring blankly at the ceiling. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed. Rachel, she croaked, her voice raspy from the lake water. I walked over to the foot of her bed, my face a mask of absolute indifference. They told me Cameron is dead, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. He died, saving me. Yes, he did. She swallowed hard, looking away. When I was under the water, when he was pushing me toward the ladder, I looked up at the dock. Her gaze snapped back to me, sharpening into something accusatory. I saw you, Rachel. You weren't having a heart attack. I saw your face. You were just staring at him. You watched him go under. My heart gave a momentary thud, but I didn't break eye contact. In my past life, this woman had worn my dead brother's sacrifice like a romantic badge of honor. She had stolen the man I loved over my brother's grave. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the plastic railing of her bed, bringing my face inches from hers. Listen to me very carefully, Vanessa, I whispered, my voice devoid of any warmth. Cameron threw away his life because you were too stupid to stay away from the edge of a wet dock in a storm. He made his choice, and I made mine. I chose my brother. You're a monster, she breathed, shrinking back against her pillows. I'm going to tell Victoria. I'm going to tell everyone. I smiled. It was a cold, brittle thing. Tell them what? That a grieving girlfriend was paralyzed by shock? The medical records say I had a severe cardiac event. Who are they going to believe? The hysterical girl who caused the accident? Or the medical charts? I straightened up, smoothing my hospital gown. You get to live, Vanessa, but don't ever cross my path again, because the next time you fall, There won't be anyone left to dive in after you. Cameron's funeral was a sprawling, opulent affair held at the Cathedral of St. Paul. It felt surreal, walking down the same stone aisle, hearing the same somber organ music, smelling the same overwhelming scent of white lilies. Only this time, I wasn't mourning my brother. I was wearing a black silk dress, playing the role of the tragic, heartbroken girlfriend. Victoria Hayes had tried to ban me from the service, but the optics of turning away the deceased's long-term girlfriend would have been scandalous, and Victoria cared about appearances above all else. She settled for ignoring me completely, standing at the front row, wrapped in a black veil, radiating fury. Then she arrived. Vanessa. She walked into the cathedral wearing a sheer black dress that looked more suited for a cocktail party than a funeral, leaning heavily on a cane she absolutely did not need. She wept loudly, theatrically, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, ensuring every pair of eyes in the pews landed on her, the grieving damsel, the tragic muse who had inspired a man's ultimate sacrifice. I watched the sickening performance play out almost exactly as it had in my previous life, but the twist came during the reception at the country club. I was standing near the terrace, sipping a glass of sparkling water, when I saw Vanessa making her move. She didn't approach Victoria Hayes. She approached Nathan. My brother was standing uncomfortably near the buffet, looking handsome and somber in his dark suit. Vanessa practically draped herself over his arm, looking up at him through her eyelashes. "Nathan," she murmured, her voice carrying over the quiet chatter. "I just wanted to say, I know how hard it must have been for you, being a doctor and not being able to save him. Cameron admired you so much." Nathan stiffened, trying to politely extricate his arm from her grasp. "Thank you, Vanessa. It's a tragic loss for everyone." "I just feel so alone now," she continued, stepping closer, her hand sliding up to his shoulder. "Cameron was my rock. And you're so strong. Just like him." Bile rose in my throat. She wasn't just a parasite. She was an opportunistic predator. Cameron wasn't even cold in the ground, and she was already trying to latch onto the next promising target, a soon-to-be Mayo Clinic surgeon. I didn't let Nathan suffer another second. I walked over, stepping smoothly between them, forcing Vanessa to step back. "Vanessa," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "Victoria was just looking for you. She's in the private parlor down the hall." Vanessa's eyes flashed with annoyance, but she quickly masked it with a tragic sigh. Of course, I should go comfort her. She turned and hobbled away. I watched her go, knowing exactly what was waiting for her in that parlor. Earlier that week, I had hired a private investigator using my savings. I didn't need him to find anything new. I just needed him to uncover what I already knew from my past life. Vanessa hadn't come back to Minnesota because she was heartbroken over a breakup. She came back because she had maxed out her credit cards in Paris and had been evicted. She had been texting her ex-fiancé in France the entire weekend at the lake, bragging that she had Cameron wrapped around her finger and was going to get him to pay off her debts. I had anonymously couriered those printed text messages to Victoria Hayes' mansion that morning. 10 minutes later, a scream echoed from the hallway. It wasn't a scream of grief. It was a screech of pure, indignated rage. Victoria Hayes had discovered the truth. She realized her golden boy hadn't died a hero for a tragic love. He had died a pawn for a gold-digging fraud. We heard the sound of shattering glass, followed by Victoria's booming voice ordering her security to throw Vanessa out of the club. Vanessa was dragged out through the lobby, weeping hysterically, her designer heels scraping against the marble floor. Her social standing, her financial prospects, her reputation ruined in a matter of minutes by the very family she tried to exploit. I stood on the terrace, feeling the cool evening breeze against my face. Nathan came to stand beside me, handing me a fresh drink. "Did you hear what happened inside?" he asked, looking bewildered. Mrs. Hayes completely lost it on Vanessa. "I heard," I said softly, taking a sip. "It's a mess, Rachel. This whole thing. It's just a tragedy. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I start my residency next month. I was thinking of deferring, to stay here with you, to help you grieve. I turned to look at my brother, my wonderful, brilliant brother, who had an entire lifetime of saving real lives ahead of him. Absolutely not, I said firmly, a genuine smile finally breaking through my facade. You are going to the Mayo Clinic, Nathan. You are going to be an incredible surgeon. You are going to live a long, beautiful life. He looked at me, surprised by my sudden conviction. Are you sure you'll be okay? I've never been better, I whispered, looking up at the clear, starry sky. The storm was finally over. The nightmare was rewritten. I had played God. I had rigged the game. And I had won. I stopped my brother from saving my boyfriend, and I would carry that dark secret to my grave. And I would do it again, 1,000,000 times over. Did Rachel go too far to protect her brother? Or was it the ultimate act of justified revenge against a toxic relationship? Let me know whose side you're on in the comments below. If this intense story of rebirth and betrayal kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more crazy real-life dramas.